This is Jake Ciely, and I'm the blown ACL that ruins your football season.
Good news, everyone! Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool!
I know.
It feels so right!
It's Jake Ciely.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Nice try, Moonman. Pretending not to know. Earth's greatest mastermind!
You just made the list!
I thought you said that was a myth.
Just because it's a myth doesn't mean it's not true.
If you all blindly follow my plan, we may have a chance.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, burn.
Game on, you ducks. This is the normal fantasy football podcast with a great guest as well as the other one. Again, if you haven't listened to the Voice of Darkwing Duck podcast episode, go rectify that. Listen to that. Share it to your friends, your family, everybody, because it was such an amazing. Jim Cummings is such a good guest, and he does such great voice work. 1,500 voices. I can't even think about 1,500 podcasts. I don't know that I've even gotten to that number yet. So anyway, make sure you listen to that. But we're talking fantasy football on this one with not a lot from me, mostly because we covered the biggest things from Ian today. Ian Hartitz of Fantasy Life. You've heard him with me with talking with Pat Mayo. And we're going to talk about the Haskins Vidal situation, stock up for a lot of players. And we cover all the big stuff, really. And anything I didn't is over in the column at The Athletic. There's notes for every position. The ranks will be updated. And plus, we spent a lot of time talking today and talk some breaking news with the Giants backfield. So not a lot for me to just throw out to you. But I will be back, of course, on Friday, like always. All right, and as already mentioned, you know Ian, because if you've been listening to the super long episodes where we get to dissect his rankings early in the week, and then if you listen on Friday, you're like, why did Ian have this guy ranked here? Well, maybe you should check out the updated ranks, just like you do with mine over at Fantasy Life, at Ian Hartitz. If you're not following him on Twitter, then you're missing out on at least, what does it say, about like 3.5 good jokes a day, Ian, I would say, on the Twitter sphere over there. One of the best in the business. Thanks for joining me on my podcast, as we always do on Pat's podcast.
Oh, appreciate you having me, man. You were on the Fantasy Life show earlier this summer. Always a fun time chopping it up with you. But yeah, man, I am certainly a volume tweeter. But hey, we're only counting the hits, right?
Not only the hits, but when you hit, you hit like gang. But you're basically the Justin Fields, like the hits, the top three. It's just we just ignore the few.
I also have my best tweets in the last quarter of the day, after maybe.
There you go. That's what it is. The last 10%. It's always the last 10%. Actually, speaking of quarterback, interesting enough, this happened after we already did that ranking show and after we talked about all these trade possibilities for the Bengals. But by the way, I know you're looking at me like we're not doing video, so you don't have to I'm going to leave this at the podcast so people are just wondering whatever. This is audio only, so you don't have to look all pristine and everything like that. If you've seen Ian, now you can relax, drink some coffee, or whatever's in that cup. But yeah, wave the arms and wacky, wavy, inflatable, flailing arm tube man. Joe Flacco was the one that was traded to the Bengals. Not what I know you and I hoped, and pretty much the entire fantasy world, was that it was going to be Jameis, because it would have been rocket to the moon for everybody there. Well, mostly Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So Flacco. And I know everybody had their takes yesterday. I had one where I was just like, you know what? I've watched Joe Flacco this season, and I know he was on the Browns, and I know the passing options are better, but he didn't look definitively better than Jake Browning. But he's Joe Flacco. He's a veteran. You look at some of the metrics, they're in line. The biggest one that you could propose for Flacco being an improvement is that more of his targets are on target. But is this, to use the video game term, do we just get an extra life for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or it's just going to unfortunately be more of the same? Which side are you on for your hot takey Joe Flacco to the Bengals situation?
I will say that, and you're right. I mean, 2025 Flacco has been a shell of the guy we saw in 23 and 24 when he actually led the NFL in passing yards per start. But I really am confident that we can get, hopefully, another life, to your point, for at least T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, I mean, nothing has gone that wrong. Even in the game 2 against the Jaguars where Burrow got hurt, I mean, 10 catches and 125 of those yards actually came from Jake Browning. Obviously had to blow up against the Lions. Yeah, he didn't boom against the Vikings or Broncos. Those are also two of maybe the top 2, top 3, passing defenses in the NFL. So I don't think that's going to be alleviated this week in Lambeau. Very tough one. But after that, man, Steelers, Jets, and Bears. So for me, again, I'm starting 25-year-old prime Jamar Chase if Kendall Hinton is under center, Jake. So again, a situation where if you want to rank him wide receiver 9 instead of wide receiver 3. Okay, whatever. You're starting the guy. For me, it's all about can T. Higgins, who we're going to continue to probably treat as a boomer bust wide receiver 3, get some more booms out there. I do think that Flacco's willingness to test tight coverage and just kind of lay it up there for T probably fits a little bit better for Browning. But again, I think I moved T from like wide receiver 33 to like wide receiver 29. So I'm not exactly entering this with all the confidence in the world. But hey, man, I really don't think it can get too much worse here. That was how low the bar was for Browning. So I'm happy the Bengals made a move. But to your original point, sure would have been a lot cooler if it was for one of those Giants quarterbacks.
Man, why do you love T. Higgins so much? I have him at 33. What are you thinking, man? He's just going crazy over there with that love.
I know, just really hot take you over here. You know me.
Bengals, though. I think that was the easy answer. So now let me give you the tough question because I covered this as well. I'm pretty much in agreement. If anybody read this stuff over The Athletic, pretty much echoing what you said is that even if we were considering or like last week with Jamar Chase, like what the worst we could rank him was like wide receiver 14. It's like you weren't not playing him, but the one we could consider, especially since there's only 2 teams on the bye, are we like? Is it game over, to use another term? Is it game over Chase Brown, to use the other Chase? Is this like Joe Flacco can't even fix this because he can't fix the offensive line? And for everything we talked about Chase Brown last year, I mean, there's Genty on the Raiders who's getting no blocking. There are running backs in other situations who have it almost, not quite, but almost as bad as Chase Brown. And Brown just doesn't look anything like he did last year, offensive line or not. Like, is there any hope left?
I don't have much, man. Again, crazy stat I found this week. He has 83 touches without a gain of even 15 plus yards this year. The next closest running back is Dylan Sampson at 31. I know the offensive line sucks, but you can't give us one breakaway run, Chase Brown. And I will say, it's always so tough to try to properly quantify, what these running backs are doing independent of their quarterback. And in this case, piss poor offensive line. So I totally get it. But man, rushing yards over expected per next gen stats. It literally has TreVeyon, Henderson, Chase Brown, and Zach Charbonnet as the 3 worst running backs in the NFL. So I will say the bigger issue too is just like, yeah, Brown is clearly the lead back in Cincinnati, 65% snaps, 76% rush attempts, and 48% routes, but he has ceded almost all of their long down and distance and 2-minute work to Samaje Perine. So we're not even getting, the sort of just BS fourth quarter Justin Fields-esque, fantasy production here for Chase Brown because he's usually not even on the field when they are, in kind of that comeback hurry up mode. So Chase Brown this week for me, my RB 26. And just, Jake, I mean, I know Taj Brooks has barely even gotten to touch the field, but I just feel like when you're going now on nearly a month and a half of this horrendous inefficiency, at some point the team needs to do something.
I couldn't agree more. Is that like, why aren't we seeing more? Maybe they just know Taj Brooks isn't ready, but the profiles are similar. Like, I think this is a severe concern where the fact that, like, I mean, I have Chase. Where did you say where you had Chase Brown? I have him down in the 30s.
Ooh,
or almost the 30s. No. Go, where do you have him?
I got him 26. He's right there with Pollard, Jalen Warren, or Ramondre Stevenson. Other running backs that, I don't feel good about putting them in my lineup at all right now if I can help it.
I was looking at like the PPR isn't even helping him, so I have him a little bit lower. But half actually at half PPR, I have him at 26, right there with Ramondre Stevenson, Alvin Kamara, who we're not even talking about, Kenneth Gainwell, who's in a split. So this is a rough. So you could find yourself benching him. Actually, here's one transition right into this. Is speaking of hot takes, you have to have a stance, Ian. You can't pick one or the other. You can't say. I say that tongue in cheek. I think this is something that I don't think enough people talk about. Is, Ian, it's okay that we don't have the clear answer, and we're not going to have the clear answer. And I'm talking about the Chargers backfield. Like, we're not in the mind of Harbaugh. We're not in the mind of Greg Roman. Like, we could try and piece together whatever we can. And as of today, what we could piece together can go 2 different directions. Initially, yesterday, we could have made the argument that Vidal got touches over Haskins last year when it was down to those 2 as potential fill-ins. And then this year, you could be like, oh, Haskins, 4 years ago now, played with Harbaugh at Michigan. But I'm sure you saw this, Ian. They picked up Nyheim Hines, which kind of feels like Hines doesn't compliment Vidal, he compliments Haskins, which kind of now leans to, well, maybe it's not Vidal, maybe it is Haskins as the lead. So, as I said, you can't come down the middle and say, you know what, we have to see how it plays out. Please don't play either one of them. I want you to take a firm stance in who's going to be the top 20 running back for the Chargers. No, who do you like more going forward?
I know. I'm happy you brought up the Hines news because for me, that made me flip. It was enough of a thing where I had him
Me
ranked,
too.
Pat was giving me some crap about it, deservedly so. But I had Vidal RB34, Haskins RB35, so it wasn't exactly taking the strongest stance to begin with. But once you added Hines to the equation, I thought that running back addition, Jake, earlier in the week was going to be Gus Edwards, which obviously would have been more so an issue for Haskins, the early down goal line hammer of the equation. So now I have flipped it where it is going to be Haskins for me as the preferred start, at least for this week. To your point, could we get here on Sunday and find out, oh, it's just a mess where, yeah, we actually don't want to roster any of these guys or overly trust them? That is certainly on the table. But the other thing I will say, man, when you do look at least last week, and again, couldn't have a smaller sample here, literally 2 drives. There was a 14-play drive without Omari and Hampton where Justin Herbert was still in the game. Those snaps were 8 for Haskins and 6 for Kimani Vidal. Then Herbert, and they pretty much pulled everyone. Haskins got to go sit with Justin Herbert on the sideline, okay? It was Kimani Vidal purely for that 6-play Trey Lance drive. Was that because they were more so in 2 minutes? Okay, whatever. Again, possibility. We're trying to do the best we can here. But I do think it's us on Haskins. Now, that said, Jake, like you do projections every week. What do you have him for? Like 12, 13 touches? So it's tough to get too excited, but, I am willing to, I guess, move Haskins up a couple spot, put him next to like Ramondre Stevenson and Tony Pollard.
Yeah, that's funny. I have him right behind. I'm not even the biggest Tony Pollard fan. You guys, anybody who's listened to the Full Form podcast, as Ian and I sat there from the preseason and told Pat, do not buy into Tony Pollard. Or no, wait, no, that was Pat. It was me and Pat telling you that, right? Well, who was it? Or we were all against Tony Pollard. I don't remember which way we stood on that.
How can I remember all these takes, Jake?
Okay, yeah, whatever. There's too many of them. I'm not the biggest fan of Tony Pollard, period. But Haskins is like right behind him at 32 now, and then Vidal is down by like where you said, like TreVeyon, Henderson, Pacheco, Miller, like whatever. This Pacheco thing is sad, by the way. That's not even on the podcast to talk about today. We'll have to do that another time. So I can't believe that we're actually going to spend like a decent chunk actually bringing up. So for everybody out there that's been listening to this podcast, I call it like the Fancy Five. I get 5 topics and get these guys out of here in short order. And one of them is about tight ends this week. We're actually pulling apart like 5 big things to talk about. Let's talk tight ends. But here's where I went with this, Ian, is it kind of came to me because of the questions in my waiver column. And it was because Mason Taylor and Theo Johnson last week were 2 of the biggest pickups to fill in for Pitts and injured tight ends, Brock Bowers. And they both had good weeks. And we talked about that on the ranking show and said, hey, they're essentially the number 2s on their team, especially now that Slayton's missing this week. And Njoku pops back up with Dylan Gabriel. But this is where I'm going with it. If you have Kyle Pitts, and the fact that the matchup this week is really tough for tight ends, do you maybe think about not putting Pitts right back into your lineup if you happen to pick up a Taylor or Theo Johnson? And not to because things can change in 3 weeks. But as of today, I guess the biggest question I'm asking you, Ian, is of these 4 tight ends being Pitts, Taylor, Johnson, and Njoku, who do you feel best about?
This week, I can see going a different direction off of Pitts. Again, the Bills have only allowed 15 targets to tight ends this year. I mean, the Falcons are tied for last as well. Nobody else is under 21. So I really do think it's one of these scheme things where they really just find ways to, not, let the opponents get their tight ends involved. We saw that with Hunter Henry last Sunday night as well. So I hear you on that. Rest of season, I would still lean Kyle Pitts. I know he hasn't been blowing up, week after week, but I have never seen this man, even going back to his rookie year, play this good of football. He's snatching everything out there, and he actually looks like the big athletic freak that he was drafted to be. So I am going to stand strong with Kyle Pitts. I think his passing game compared to these guys, we're talking about Justin Fields, Jackson Dart, Dylan Gabriel throwing to him. I will take Michael Penix over that side group. So give me Pitts long-term. This week and this week only, though, give me Theo Johnson, man. Darius Slayton just got ruled out. There's no Malik Neighbors. We have the number 2 option against an Eagles defense that has been good, but albeit not exactly great this year. So I will say, Dwayne McFarland, shout out to my co-host over on the Fantasy Live show. He was hitting me with some stuff with Mason Taylor's last 2 weeks, and just again, kind of the great company that he's in. Historically, those would be, season-long tight end 1 numbers when looking at his routes and targets and things like that. But man, a lot of that same fourth quarter stuff that again, we're kind of slandering Justin Fields for, it also applies to Mason Taylor. Over these last 2 weeks, Mason Taylor has only been the tight end 19, Jake, in quarters 1 through 3. Booms up and has been the most productive tight end in quarter 4. So, hey, style points don't count in fantasy. We'll take them however they come and everything. But for me, Theo Johnson, just freak athleticism. I think he has similar target shares, and I'll take the Giants passing game over the Jets when it comes down to it. But pretty disgusting, comparison there.
Well, then let me take this one step further just with a follow-up question, because I've always been I don't want to call it a proponent because it sounds weird. I've always argued that I don't like to carry 2 tight ends in basically that 8 to 15 range, because then you create a headache with your starting lineup every single week. And for everybody out there, you remember Let's Make a Deal. It's kind of similar to that, like where you can say, I got to start Pitts every single week and just ride with it. You add in that extra decision, and now you've actually given yourself a bigger chance of getting it wrong than just the player itself being the one that gets it wrong. All that being said, it made that super complicated. But point being, I'm kind of with you in the fact that I have Pitts in one league, and I actually picked up Theo Johnson, and I looked at who to drop, and I was like, you know what? I might actually just drop somebody like I was Jaden Blue, because they obviously don't want to use Jaden Blue. It's Miles Sanders if he's coming back as the backup. And just for this 1 week, I'm like, I could see doing the tight end. Would you do that, or would you go back to what I was saying, get that decision out of your hands?
I think if you have a Jaden Blue-esque player who, again, just really has we're multiple injuries away from him being, anything at this point, I think that's fine. But if you are in a tough position, I'm not going to go ahead and stress over the difference of, 1.5 projected points for Theo Johnson and Kyle Pitts. So it is tough out there. So yeah, I would say, if you can only keep one tight end realistically, like don't be cutting, a Bhayshul Tuten or, one of these really high-end handcuffs on your bench for it. I'm very much cool with just riding with Kyle Pitts. And honestly, I was in that predicament last week with DSTs because I've been wanting to ride with the Patriots until week 14. Obviously, they were playing the Bills, and I tried to, when possible, to get the Browns as a fill-in, and then the Patriots decided to go ahead and ball out against the Bills anyway. So, again, as much as we try to have these best laid plans sometimes, when it comes down to it, I do think a tight end, DST, and some of these FER positions, you were spot on.
So I'm glad you brought up Bhayshul Tuten, because there's one that actually got put in this conversation from a lot of people, again, asking comments over The Athletic, is to use the video game term again, game over? Game over? You want to kind of give them a life to hold on. Maybe they get the bonus life. They haven't cashed it in yet. But is it game over at this point of the season for 3 running backs? One of them is Bhayshul Tuten, RJ Harvey, and TreVeyon Henderson. Because RJ Harvey just 2 weeks ago were like, okay, cool, Tyler Batty out of the equation. What happens in week 5? He's back in the equation in front of RJ Harvey because Sean Payton's going to Sean Payton. TreVeyon Henderson starts to see a tick up, but then we still get fumbles for Stevenson, and Mike Vrabel has the biggest heart, we'll say, instead of the other thing I was about to say, for Ramondre Stevenson, and then Bhayshul Tuten's just not involved. Like, are they all just, and again, I know what you just said, you don't want to just drop them for random 6th wide receiver, but some of these people listening are in 10-team leagues, some of these people have injuries, and they might be their worst players. Any hope for any of the 3 of them, or are they all, you're turning the power off?
Henderson's the one where I do think there's a chance that now that this backfield is condensed to 2 without Antonio Gibson, we could see something closer to borderline RB2 numbers and someone we can actually put in a flex and not feel atrocious about. He just got to play better, man. Again, the fumbles are obviously a big deal, but this year Henderson's 32nd in yards per carry, 30th in yards per catch. And even the one thing he was just unanimously lauded for out of Ohio State, pass protection, I think that's been what's keeping him off the field a lot. This year, in terms of pass protection snaps, there's Ramondre Stevenson with 35, and TreVeyon only has 8, man. So it's one of these things where I know we don't get fantasy points for pass blocking, but guess what? If you can't pass block, they're not going to feel confident putting you out there in the 2-minute situations, in those pass first situations where you otherwise will be getting some fantasy points sometimes. So honestly, also seeing that impacting RJ Harvey. He only has 3 pass pro snaps this year. Tyler Beatty has 8. J.K. Dobbins has 18. And Bhayshul Tuten, he's also losing out to ETN and also LaQuint Allen. So I will say Bhayshul Tuten, as much as, the explosion and the size speed combination is tantalizing and all that, he's the only NFL running back with at least 25 carries without a rush of at least 10 yards. So fantastic handcuff. I get it. And, you can also come up with some cool stats. He's one of only 10 RBs averaging at least 1 PPR point per touch. I'm not trying to say he's horrible, but I also just don't think he's a second coming of LaDainian Tomlinson like half of the fantasy community out here. So I'll say Henderson, best chance of carving something out. I think Tuten is a pure handcuff. Harvey, he's playing really well with his opportunities, Jake. But to your point, Sean Payton is Tyler Beatty. I don't think Dobbins is disappearing. In my heart of hearts, if you have to make a tough decision, I do think it's okay to cut Harvey. He's more of a handcuff.
Yeah, I think Sean Payton is the biggest troll in all football. I almost feel like he does it intentionally just to mess with us. But before I get the last
Dobbins
question,
is playing well. We agree that Dobbins is playing well, but what is Beatty doing? That's what pisses me off.
I could not agree with you anymore. We talked on Pat's show, and you said there's a non-zero chance J.K. Dobbins keeps the job the entire year if he's healthy. It would also be the first time he's played a full season. Even his rookie season, he didn't play the entire year. It was one game that he was out for. And I think that's the biggest thing is people are like, oh, well, Dobbins, can he even play a full season? But to throw a curveball at you, by the way, MLB playoffs going on. Shout out for that for some reason. This was not in the topics, but it's happening as we're doing this. Tyrone Tracy's returning this week out of the blue. Not even just hey, he might be practicing. No, already, boom, today, he's returning. How worried are you for Scatterboo hearing that?
Not very, man. And maybe I should be, okay? But I have Scatterboo before, assuming Tracy was out as my RB15. I'm going to drop him behind Dowdle, Rashad White, And that's probably it. RB18, RB19 range. I'm not going to move him, past Kenneth Walker or David Montgomery or Alvin Kamara or something. So for me, he's still locked in as a top 20 running back. I don't like when these running backs come back through rib and shoulder injuries, man. I feel like it really limits their ability to play fast, play physical. And then, man, those are the two, obviously, especially the physical part, the calling card of Scadaboo. So even last year, man, like when Tyrone Tracy initially got his chance, that was because Devin Singletary got injured. And then he came back and Daboll said, yeah, okay, I don't care. It's Tyrone Tracy's backfield right now. So I do think Scadaboo is the best option, and we have seen Daboll consistently, man, really just lean on one running back as opposed to a committee. So again, prepared to be wrong. I think it's fair to say it's not going to be the 80-20, 70-30 split in favor of Scadaboo. Tyrone Tracy will carve a little bit more into it, but still Scadaboo for me pretty confidently.
I'm wondering, as a quick sidebar, and we'll get the last question and then a fun one, as always, to get you out of here, but I'm wondering if we might see some Tyrone Tracy on the line of scrimmage. And the fact that because they're down so many pass catchers with Slayton now out this week, like we might see both backs on the field and you see him running some routes similar to like a Gibbs situation, or you get what I'm saying there. It's like even a Christian McCaffrey, just they're both on the field and Scadaboo's in the backfield and Tracy isn't. Just because you saw how bad it was. Jalen Hyatt hasn't done anything in the NFL. And then I brought this up when we talked on Pat's show. It's like Bo Collins, Notre Dame, underrated because of the passing game from Notre Dame, but he did himself no favors on the intercept. Like if I was a coach and I watched that, and because I did see it happen, that interception for Jackson Dart was an interception, but Bo Collins stopped. And then he just watched the interception happen. I'm just like, you're getting benched. Like you're not even going to get a stock tick up in snaps this week. But anyway, here we go. Last one, and then the fun ones. Which commander is the bigger power-up for another video game before we get out of all these questions? Who's got the bigger power-up so far? Or I should say going forward. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, unlike the Broncos, finally kicked somebody aside in the fact that he kicked aside Chris Rodriguez and got the start. He got the lead on the first and second series, which the design series, as you brought up, we were talking about a completely different team. We were talking about the Giants at that point, but we brought up the fact that the first two series are often scripted, and the first two series for the Commanders, their scripting has involved Chris Rodriguez. This past week, it wasn't. It was Croskey-Merritt, so now he is clearly in the lead. So bigger power up for him or Deebo Samuel, who's been a wide receiver one, which the easy answer might just be, well, that's been without Terry McLaurin, but maybe your argument is Deebo Samuel. I was kind of curious which way you might lean with this.
So, like, who would I rather have rest of the season, basically straight up?
No, who's the bigger stock tick up from what we had a few weeks ago? Like, who's more, put it this way, who's more believable to continue what's happened recently?
I'm going to go with Bill. Again, I think getting that starting nod over Rodriguez shows us that there was like a conscious decision to give him the football more, which happened. Like they had to go to C-Rod and be like, hey man, Bill's starting now at this point. Okay. So, and honestly, like McNichols and Chris Rodriguez, like they've been pretty efficient with their touches, but Bill has just been so much more. And unlike some of those pass protection stats I brought up before that were unanimously negative for the rookies, they actually have trusted Bill. Bill has 10 snaps in pass protection this year. Rodriguez and McNichols combined only have 9. So they've actually been willing to throw the dude the ball, keep him in the game. And obviously he's been, leading the NFL in rushing yards per carry. So he's crushing it, with all of his opportunities. So I'm going to go with Bill. Again, I don't exactly expect Deebo to fall off a cliff, but it is interesting to me, Jake, as much as he still has been used a little bit as a running back, he's also got 9 screen targets this year that only trails Troy Franklin. Like he's been making more of his money and just like receptions downfield, I think, than we're used to seeing, which is a compliment to Deebo being more of a complete receiver than perhaps we've had him be in past years. But I do think bringing Terry McLaurin back is going to eat a little bit into that production that, again, Deebo has been going his way. So feeling pretty good if I got either guy on my team, but Bill is the one where it's like, man, we really are, to your point, seeing a power up right now.
Yeah, I put this in the column and give you some extra stuff for your love here, Ian. Minimum 25 touches for running backs. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, number 1 in yards per carry at 6.6. Obviously, that's not sustainable, but it's a fun number to hear. How about the fact he's second in yards per touch, only to Bijan Robinson, 7.1 to 7.0. He's second in yards after contact at 4.4 behind RJ Harvey, who's still banking on that 50-yard run from week 1. And he's also third in yards before contact. Thank you, that offensive line. The only 2 players that are ahead of him are part-timers, Miles Sanders and Blake Corum. So the offensive line is doing him some favors too. So yeah, I'm with you. Jacory Croskey, Bill, stock up. And then, as I promised, 2 fun ones before we get out of here. My fun ranks this week were my top 10 sodas, as everybody worries for my health. But even though I pointed out I mostly drink 0, and then I don't. It's funny. Like I rank cereals, I rank candy for Halloween, I rank sodas, and people are like, "You're gonna die. You have diabetes." Like I don't Dude, I don't eat and consume the list in one day. It's not like I'm sitting there like, let me eat 25 cereals today as I rank these. Let me drink all 10 of these sodas and energy drinks and what? Like, I'm okay, people. Like, look at me. I'm okay. I've actually have regular blood tests because of my UC. I'm okay. Anyway, what's your favorite soda? Because that was the fun ranks this week.
Hey, you're right, though. Go get a physical, everyone. Okay. I went like 8 years without. Luckily,
that is true.
I'm still alive and doing well. But just go get your physical, man. Living is honestly pretty cool at the end of the day. So let's all try to do that for as long as possible. That's it. I'm going to go with McDonald's Coke specifically, Jake. I've actually run across in my YouTube algorithm some science behind this. They literally deliver the syrup to McDonald's in stainless steel tanks. Like there is science behind why McDonald's Coke tastes better. Yes, 100%. I guess they alter it as well. So like even when the ice melts, it actually makes
they put more crack in it or Coke.
Yeah, exactly. So again, my rule, because if all food, like if you could pick one restaurant that was good for you and you just had to eat that the rest of your life, I'd probably pick McDonald's. Like it is so good, and I don't fault anyone for going there all the time. My rule is I can only get McDonald's when I'm going on a car trip of at least 1 hour or more. So that's kind of my personal code for limiting it. Because I'm normally with you, like when I do have soda, it's going to be like Coke Zero variety. But if you just said, hey, last day on this planet, you can have one soda, give me a Coke from McDonald's.
That's crazy. I never knew that. Look, I found something out today. Like, yeah, everybody's going to worry for you, Ian. Go get your heart checked. Go get your sugar levels. You know what? The funny thing is, you say that about McDonald's in college. This is going to, and people are going to be like, oh, see, this is why you have health problems. I don't. I used to buy 2 Big Macs and then combine the meats and all this. So I would throw away 3 pieces of bread and combine the two to make like a Big Mac.
Well, you remember it was if you take the cheeseburger and then you add the McChicken inside of it, that's the McGangbang. Like that was a whole thing.
Oh, that freak!
Delicious, man. I haven't had one in years, but those were amazing.
Oh, it sounds like we were taking a trip to McDonald's. All right, this was the last one. This is the fun. This is the pick your poison I make every single guest do. You have 3 choices, and you have to pick one. Shout out to your boss, Nando DeFino, for doing this for the longest time. His usually involved poops or farts, but I kind of took it from him. I don't necessarily go down that road, and I didn't for you. But the third one is always tailored to the guest, and you'll see why on this one. So here's your 3 choices. You have to pick one. The first one is your 2 running backs this week are Hassan, Haskins, and Kimani Vidal. Those are your 2 running backs. The second option, you have to start 4 Titans in your lineup. 4. The last one, you have to give up your OSU fanmanship and start rooting for Michigan.
Oh, my God. Well, obviously, I am not going to do that one, Jake. That freaking team. And now we got to pick between Haskins as well. Haskins made me very, very upset back in 2020. You know what's bad, man? Like, I got married a couple years ago. I've known my wife for, I think it's actually 6 years, a couple days ago. And, like, her family has started visiting us on Thanksgiving. And every single time they have come here, I have seen Ohio State lose to Michigan. So they just think I'm some sort of psychopath, constantly locking myself away. So absolutely not that one. I would go with...
Sounds like you need to excommunicado her side of the family.
I think I'm starting 2 running backs. I think I'm starting Haskins and Vidal. The thing is with the 4 Titans, man, Ridley, we actually saw him look good last week. And it's another reasonable matchup against the Raiders. But after that, bro, we already talked about Pollard, and maybe I was higher on him with the potential volume early on in the year. But Tajay Spears is back, and we're already hearing from Nick Holes that Spears should be more involved moving forward. I like Ayo Manor, Chico Conquo, even he's getting a snap seen through by Connor Helm. Give me Haskins and Vidal, and just an insulting third choice, Jake, over my freaking corpse, bro.
I knew it. At one of these days, somebody's going to pick the third one. I think I've only got somebody to pick the third one once, and it was for the rest of your life, or was it the rest of the year? Because the rest of your life might have been extreme. It was whatever it was. You have a little rock stabby pebble in your shoe everywhere you walk 24 hours a day. Like that's, yeah. But somebody actually picked that one, and I think that the first 2 choices were just that bad for fantasy-wise. But what's not bad is make sure you're following Ian Hartitz. Before you get out of here, by the way, and thank you again, tell everybody all the great stuff of fantasy life. You and Dwayne stay up till all hours in the morning to recap. You know what? I'll just let you tell everybody all the good stuff.
I appreciate you, bro. Dwayne and I do start the week off with a Sunday evening post-Sunday Night Football recap. We usually finish up around 2 a.m. Then we wake up, usually about 9 a.m. Go ahead and get the Week 6 ranks article published and out there so Jake, Pat, and I can talk about it. And then Monday through Thursday, Dwayne, myself, and the rest of our Fantasy Life staff, 5 p.m. Eastern, the Fantasy Life Show on YouTube or any podcast you guys are interested in. And then we chop it up for around 50 to 60 minutes. Good at times all around. So, yeah, man, fantasylife.com, just trying to hopefully making guys a little bit smarter, have some fun along the way. It is just fantasy football at the end of the day, right, Jake?
It is, and it's just a lot of fun, and so much fun, and so much thanks to Ian, who I know, I told him before I started the show, is that he had to follow up my favorite guest of all time. But if they're a fantasy favorite guest, Ian would at least be top 5, I can tell you that much. So make sure you're following over there. And on Twitter, like if you just want the laughs and the great memes and videos and clips that he has, you make sure you're doing that. And thanks again. You can, find us again next week. We'll be talking with Pat on that one. Once again, that was Ian. Once again, please listen to the podcast with the Darkwing Duck, Winnie the Pooh, Jim Cummings, the greatest voice actor in the history of forever, Hall of Famer. I'm calling him that. I don't even know if they have a Hall of Fame of voice acting, but he should be. And I'll be back on Friday for all the news, notes, injuries that you need in the quick hit version form. Weird pauses there. That's why I'm not a voice actor. Maybe one day I can be. Oh, but if Darkwing Duck does get rebooted and comes back and I don't get the guest voice 10 seconds, I just quit.